Welcome everyone to the 2020 Indiana AAC Summit virtual sessions, real solutions. We're so excited that you're with us tonight. This session is titled Building Communication in an Autism-Focused Classroom, presented by Kim Hurley. So my name is Beth Browning. I'm a speech language pathologist and senior consultant for PRC in the southern half of Indiana.
And I'm Beth Waite-Lefevre. I'm also a speech language pathologist, and I'm a RESNA certified assistive technology professional, and I happen to work for PRC Saltillo as well. I'm a training and implementation specialist.
So a little bit of background about the Indiana AAC Summit. It was probably at least 8 years ago. I met Beth at a Chili's. We had dinner and talked about, you know, in my job, I travel all over the state of Indiana, and I'm meeting these teams who are doing really awesome things with AAC. And then I'm meeting some teams who are really struggling to kind of get off the ground. And I wish there was a way that I could bring all of these people together in one place. And actually, my first idea was to get a bus and drive all over the state. If you know me, you would know that sounds just like me. To just drive everybody around the state and stop by, do a little field trip for everyone, so that we could network and collaborate and share what's working and not have to reinvent the wheel. Well, Beth quickly shot that idea down. She's like, no, we are not getting a bus.
Reason had to speak up.
So it was great, because by the time I left that meal that night, we kind of had a plan in place. I know in the back of my head, I was thinking, what have I gotten myself into? But from there, we got a steering committee together. We came up with the idea. We really started with a Facebook page and a dream. And Beth, do you want to talk about our first event that we held back in 2015?
Sure. So we had our first event in 2015 in Martinsville, Indiana, and it was at a camp called Bradford Woods. We didn't know if anybody would show up, to be honest. We thought if we had 25 people, we'd consider it a success. We had about 80 people come. We partnered with Dr. Erna Allant at Indiana University, and we were lucky to have Martin Pistorius, author of Ghost Boy, who was going to be in town, as it were, from England. So he was our guest speaker. So that was a great way to start off. We had a wonderful success, and we originally thought we'd do it every other year, but the attendees said, oh, please, we want this every year. So this is our 6th year. Last year, we celebrated our big 5-year anniversary with a special guest presenter. We had Caroline Musselwhite come do a day of training for us, and we had some other really good sessions as well. So this year, of course, thanks to our friend COVID, we are forced into the virtual environment, but we are so excited that we can offer some guest webinars for our great people in Indiana, as well as everybody. We've opened it up to anybody, and we were able to do these for free, and we have some awesome presenters, so we're excited that you're with us.
Absolutely. So a new idea that we had this year to hopefully reach more people was to have a texting service where we will send just a handful of texts every year. So we are not going to bombard you with texts, but if you would like to be opted into our text list, the number is great. It's 474747, and if you can opt in just by texting us the word summit. And you will be added to that texting list. Like I said, we only send a handful of texts each year, and it's things like, you know, save the date, or our call for papers is available, and here's the link for that kind of stuff, so that you'll be kept up to date on what's going on with the summit.
Okay, a couple housekeeping things as we get started. So if you would happen to have trouble hearing or connecting to the webinar, the first thing we would say is check your audio source, and there's an audio tab on the GoToWebinar training panel, so make sure you have the right audio source. Make sure your volume is up. If that doesn't work, you can log out of the training and log back in. Lastly, restart your computer. And if those things don't help, we're going to ask that you call Log Me In, because of course we can't really troubleshoot your tech needs while we're in the middle of the training. We will be asking you to communicate back and forth with us. There's a question panel, so you're able to ask your questions there, and Beth and I will be monitoring those. And if it's a question that she or I can answer, we'll answer it. If it's a question specifically for Kim, we'll flag that. And if we have time at the end, we will certainly get those questions to her. We do have a number of people on today, so we're not sure how many questions we'll get to answer, but please feel free to chat them out to us through that, and we will do our best.
Also, don't forget to tell them about recordings. That was on there too. We are going to record.
I missed it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yep. This presentation is recorded, and it will be on our YouTube channel in a couple of days or so. So, maybe at least by Monday we'll have it on there. So you can just look for Indiana AAC Summit on YouTube, and you can watch the recording, or you can send the link to someone to watch it. And then your handouts are in the handout tab on the Go to Webinar toolbar there. So there's two. There's a certificate of attendance, and then there's also the handouts with Kim's information. One thing I think I do want to share before we get to the last slide is just, I'm not sure for people who aren't familiar with the summit, originally the idea that, kind of Beth came up with and that we ran with was that this was people in Indiana connecting with people in Indiana. So we purposely didn't bring in outside speakers the first 4 years. We wanted our local people because we wanted it to be a speech pathologist who's doing an awesome job in her school who can share with another speech pathologist, what's working for her, or that teacher connecting with a teacher. So our presenters have always been frontline staff, special ed teachers, speech pathologists, paraprofessionals, parents. So that's why kind of where we got this whole idea of collaborating and working together. So we're happy to highlight a lot of our presenters from the past few years in our webinar series that we have going on.
Yeah. So in your handouts, you have a certificate of attendance. You can use that to track your ASHA CEUs or any other professional development requirements. So we're happy to provide that in your handouts. And then let's see here, what's on the next slide? And just a quick little disclaimer here that Indiana AAC Summit is proud to sponsor these free webinars this year. Please note that all content has been developed by the presenter or presenters and may not reflect the opinions of the staff of the Indiana AAC Summit. And so now I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight. Her name is Kim Hurley, and she is a speech language pathologist. She is in the southern half of Indiana, the area that I serve, and Kim and I work very well together, and I'm excited to hear what she has to say. She'll introduce herself a little further here. I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you. It's really nice that everybody is here, and I am super excited. Maybe too excited, so if I talk too fast, I apologize. I've never spoken to this many people all at once before, and I can't see any of you, and so it's really weird. I am Kim Hurley. I work for the Forest Hill Special Education Cooperative. We serve the Richland, Bean Blossom, and Spencer Owen Community School Corporations, which are two very small corporations in kind of a rural area outside of Bloomington, Indiana, in that very south central area of our state. It is rural to semi-rural, and that population is definitely not urban, and we are not too diverse. Disclosures, I am employed by Forest Hills and working in those schools. I'm a member of ASHA and the SIG 12, and I do receive a small stipend for this presentation. The learning outcomes tonight, I'm hoping that when you are done with this, you will be able to talk about at least a couple of resources for staff training, that you'll be able to think about at least a couple of strategies for supporting staff modeling and carryover in the classroom, and that you can identify 3 resources for writing meaningful communication goals, those that would support language and academic growth. So our building site was McCormick Creek Elementary School. Back in 2011, through a grant, a teacher established the ACE classroom. and she wanted this to be exclusively for students with autism, but it ended up being students who had autism or similar communication challenges and other sorts of disabilities. The grant included a lot of staff training, and it did develop a dedicated communication aide, an individual who was responsible for maintaining all of the communication supports for those students. And that wasn't me, that was a separate paraprofessional. There was in the original classroom a very heavy focus on behaviorism and ABA and PECS. That didn't stay that way. Through the years, we continued a focus on structured teaching, but we shifted away from really heavy discrete trial, and we moved more toward ABA technique, or away from really standardized ABA techniques and into things like TEACH. We use the STAR curriculum, but also added a lot more of that kind of student-focused sensory needs awareness to kind of bring out the actual individual in the classroom. So as we did all of these things, obviously my ability to actually teach language and communication was able to grow a little bit. I ended up being able to work with students using core boards. I had a student with an Alt Chat and Nova Chat, Dynavox, and Proloquo. In the 2019-2020 year, we absorbed a classroom from Spencer Elementary. That classroom shut down, and those students transferred to McCormick's Creek. So the population became really large, and we ended up splitting the students into 2 classrooms. They were labeled the green room, and it was more of the students who emphasized inclusion, sending them out into gen ed classes. They had fewer behavioral needs. We could increase our focus on academics in that classroom. And most of those students happened to be students who were returning to the program in that school. So they were at McCormick's Creek the year before. Unfortunately, in that classroom, the lead teacher took maternity leave starting in the second quarter. And so we lost her for a good bit of time. And that was really monumental and big upheaval in terms of the number of students and staff that we're working with. So that was a bit of a change. The blue room had the students who had more significant support needs. It was fewer opportunities for going into the gen ed setting. There were more behaviors that we had to address. There was more emphasis on pre-academic skills. 4 of the 5 students in that classroom were students who needed some sort of AAC support. And unfortunately, all of them were new to McCormick's Creek that year. None of them had been in that classroom. 1 student had been my student the previous year. All the others were new to me. General profile of those students. Student D was oppositional defiant, but he was very verbal. Student R has Down syndrome, highly unintelligible. He came with an IEP that said that he was resistant to using AAC to support his communication, and he was hard to motivate. Student H was a kindergartner with a capital ASD, a really, really involved, high support needs kid. Non-speaking, very little engagement, a lot of sensory needs. Student T, severe ADD, he was non-speaking, he had some oppositional defiant behaviors, including a lot of spitting at times. He was very sensitive to negative behavior in others and would respond by echoing that behavior. And then student S, who I knew from a different school, has severe apraxia. He also is very sensitive to negative behavior in others and does the same thing, kind of builds on negative behavior, creating kind of that domino effect. Very poor body awareness and very large for his age. So we had several problems in that classroom, not that it was the fault of anybody in particular, but just kind of a confluence of, reconstructing stuff that had already been there. We had a cluster of challenging students in the blue room. We had staffing issues because the teacher was out on maternity leave and we had a sub, but we also had paraprofessionals who didn't know how to space themselves across the 2 rooms. And there was a whole lot of staff overwhelm. Both of the teachers were relatively new to working with students with significant challenges. And while they had experience in special ed, this was a different model from what they had experienced in the past. In addition, we had some pretty significant communication needs, as I said, in the Blue Room. Student D was working on some really basic categorizing and descriptive language skills. Student R was working on his spoken personal core, but we did shift toward AAC as the year went on. Student H I consider to be pre-symbolic and pre-verbal. We did work with him based on some stuff we learned from the communication matrix. Student T had a goal of increasing his phrase utterance and building grammatical phrases. He was a full-time AAC user using LAMP Words for Life. And student S uses AAC, but he uses Speak for Yourself, and he uses it to supplement his verbal speech, which isn't very intelligible. And he's trying to learn the system. So we were working on categorizing and describing skills. We needed help. I can say all of us really felt overwhelmed at times. The students were really adjusting. The teachers were really adjusting to, more students and higher needs. And it was, the beginning of the year was a bit of a struggle. So with the support of our special ed director and the principal at McCormick's Creek, we were able to engage the Indiana Resource Center for Autism. We decided that we needed some pretty significant support from them. So we engaged them to come out for regular meetings. They would meet with staff, they would meet with paraprofessionals, they would meet with the therapists and the administration, and they would help us to coordinate some positive behavior supports for everybody, to establish some clear objectives for what we wanted that classroom to do, and also to help with scheduling. And the first priority was staff scheduling, letting our teachers and paraprofessionals have a clear understanding of where they were going and what they were doing at different times during the day, given that we had students across all of the grades and trying to get kids out to inclusion or to lunches or whatever with their peers. It was a bit of an overwhelming struggle for everybody there. On top of that, we had some communication support challenges. The communication assistant, who had been in that classroom for quite a bit of time, was somewhat comfortable with Speak for Yourself, but not at all familiar with LAMP Words for Life. The staff in general knew about visuals, but their use of visuals was very inconsistent. So any kind of visuals, behavior visuals, schedule visuals, anything that would help support them. They were not really consistent or familiar with how to use those. And there were some people who were a little confused because there were different symbol sets being used. We had used Boardmaker in the past. We were shifting toward lesson picks. Then we had the LAMP Words for Life symbols and the Speak for Yourself symbols. And there was a lot of confusion about what was the best thing to use with everybody. For communication support, we wanted to establish some good baseline understanding of where the students were. So we took student H and I evaluated him with the communication matrix, which is a really nice tool for those pre-symbolic or really early communicators. And we were able to establish a decent emergent communication goal. Student R, because he was beginning to show some interest in AAC in this classroom, we looked at the DAG2 and kind of revised his goal to incorporate learnings from AAC. Student T was just a matter of kind of clarifying how we were going to incorporate his AAC into his classroom work. We looked at the quad profile as one way to kind of figure those things out. And then student S, who I had worked with the previous year, we were clarifying how we were using AAC as a support for his speech so that everybody was clear he could speak. That was acceptable. But when we didn't understand him, he had a way to kind of clarify what he was trying to say. We started to pave the way. The ACE staff and students began to settle into a new routine that we were really, really glad to have. I think that our support from Melissa Doobie in the Resource Center for Autism was really, really helpful in that. She was able to guide everyone into establishing meaningful schedules so that primarily staff knew where to go and when to be there, and the teachers knew that I could take a break, and I can go to the bathroom. It's okay. I don't have to be in the classroom. That was really, really important for all of us, and settling into how was speech going to fit into how that all worked was an important piece of that as well. We also started to see the Blue Room be more consistent in the use of visuals to support the students in there. That was a really basic thing in my mind that, you know, hey, we should be doing this. And they were supported not just by the SLP coming and saying, oh, she should do this, but, you know, somebody from the outside who was an authority kind of led a little weight to what I was trying to do. While all this was happening, as I said, student R became very curious about AAC. I don't know what had happened in his previous school, but I do a lot of my therapy in the classroom. So I would come in and I'd be working with S or with T, and I always have an extra iPad to model. And so I would show R what was going on, and he became really interested, which was really nice. And he took to Lamp Words for Life pretty well, and wanted to use it to initiate conversation. So he would find his favorite words, and he would learn them very quickly. He found basketball, so he could talk about basketball, which he loves. He found, you know, iPhone, and he loves to say stinky, and he found that word and really enjoyed using that. And then at the same time, we saw the staff starting to ask questions about AAC, which is always a good thing in my mind. So we needed some staff training. So it was pretty apparent that we needed to do some broad staff training. And the first thing I did, of course, was email Beth Browning and say, hey, we'd love to schedule a LAMP training at our school. Yeah, years and years out. We were not going to wait years to do this. Our staff really needed to learn about AAC and motor planning, and to learn what that meant in relation to the PECS training that many of them had had, and how this was different, and this was a change in how to think about supporting communication. We also, I mean, honestly, we don't have a lot of money at all for this whole thing. We didn't have the money to send staff out to the other LAMP trainings that were available. There was no way that we could do that. We also wanted to train paraprofessionals. Well, unfortunately, our paraprofessionals are considered part-time employees. There's a limit on the number of hours that they can work, and anything above that was going to have to get approval. We were already paying a fair amount of money for the support from the Resource Center for Autism. It was worth every penny, but it wasn't, you know, something that we wanted to ignore. So we all agreed that in-house training was probably going to be the best resource. And the special ed director was like, well, Kim, you can do that. Okay. We worked with the principal at McCormick's Creek and arranged for a limited number of the paraprofessionals to receive a small stipend so that they could stay after school for professional development. And at the same time, our library assistant, who is a phenomenal individual, was really curious about how these students were using their AAC devices, and asked specifically if she could come because she does little book talks, and she wanted to be able to encourage our students when they were in the media book talks to be able to participate and engage with their peers. We needed a blueprint. So I developed my own presentation, and I borrowed heavily from the Speechy Musings AAC implementation toolkit, as well as Tabby Jones-Wolliber's Model as a Master Pal. And those are linked in the handouts. They're also in a Wakelet so that you can take a look at them. I love both of these tools. The Model as a Master Pal is free. The implementation toolkit is a paid product. I have no affiliation with Shannon from Speechy Musings, just a really good tool. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. The principal arranged for a specific date for the training, and he invited the Blue Room staff to that training, which would include the paras, and told them they would get compensated. The Blue Room teacher came to the training, and the school library assistant was able to arrange coming. And then our IRCA representative, Melissa Doobie, said, I don't know anything about LAMP, can I come? And I was like, well, sure, let's make it a party. In the meantime, we had our IT department load past software onto the teacher computer. We have a pretty locked up system in terms of downloading software, but they were able to load the past software onto that teacher computer and link it to our Promethean board. And I was able to acquire some extra school-based iPads loaded with Words for Life so that we could do the training. When the training session actually was set up, we set it up for after school, which was the best time for everybody. And I made sure that it was an interactive and hands-on session. So every attendee was able to have an iPad with Words for Life that they could work on. We emphasized really operational, functional skills, things like what happens if the iPad gets locked up? How do I put guided access on so that the student can say in it? How do I add a word? Because we have one student who really likes pictures of his friends in the device and he wants to make sure they're all in there. So how do I do that? And then of course I wanted to emphasize modeling. What does that mean? How do I, model without expectation and why I should do that? I included handouts because I do, but they include things like data sheets, but also candy. So I wanted some accountability with the data sheets and some candy for the bride, make it a little sweet. And that tends to kind of help people look at that a little more willingly. And then we had pass on the Promethean board so that I could turn around and model big on the device while they were looking at their individual iPads. This is a sample of one of the slides in that presentation, and I really did want them to practice. So I had them use those iPads with LAMP, and I said, introduce yourself, tell them what you did yesterday, and I wanted them to look at the verb tenses, tell them what you're going to do for spring break, and try to use future tense. And most of them, of course, used typing, and we talked about how typing is a great strategy, but if you're not literate, how are you going to do that? So that they could see what was important and what was hard. Within a week of that training, that was in February, within a week of that training, I noticed increased modeling by all of the classroom staff, the teachers, the paraprofessionals. The paraprofessionals in particular seemed to be empowered, and it was like, oh, a light bulb. I can do this and I can have conversations with these students. I would walk in and literally see the paras playing around on the devices and looking for words and showing the words to the students and playing. And that was really, really rewarding. The library assistant would flag me down and say, oh, hey, we had a coffee talk and, student R was talking to his friends about basketball and I was able to help him use his device to find the words. And it was really nice. In addition, the staff would come to me and they'd say, hey, I've got an idea. Should we try this in the classroom? Or, hey, what about this phrase? How do I find that? Or where's this word? Or should we put this word in there? And they wanted to say, oh, student S did this or student T did this with the device. It was really nice that they felt empowered to notice and give me feedback on what these kids were doing, which obviously encouraged the kids to be more communicative as they were using their devices. We also saw, even though student H isn't using LAMP or device at this time, we saw an increased use of visual supports with him. It began to make sense to them to use these visual cards and help him understand, touching the walk card before he goes for a walk, learning how to say no appropriately. And so those were some really nice gains for that student. In addition, Patriot Manufacturing, which is Spencer High School or Owen Valley High School's kind of work program, is doing some printing. And so we contacted them about printing some LAMP Words for Life posters. Everything seemed to be going really smoothly. This is Pass on the Promethean, and I wish I could show you a picture with the students, but I never got one. But student T especially loved to run up to the board and find his words and show the rest of the class where they were. He thought this was the best thing in the world. And it was really empowering for everybody to have these words up there when we would do calendar time. They could go up there and they could show the kids where those words were on the big Promethean, and then the kids could use them on their own devices in the classroom. And then in March, the pandemic, and we shut down. So my data to, when I wrote this proposal and submitted it, it was all before this. And so I was going to have this data about, levels of engagement with the paraprofessionals and modeling, before the training, right after the training, and then I was going to talk about the end of the school year or maybe even the beginning of this school year. And I didn't have that. We shifted immediately to e-learning, which in our minds was emergency learning. We are rural, semi-rural. My AAC users didn't have home internet that would allow them to do teletherapy. So that was not a possibility. We worked a lot on sharing some ideas. We had a shared Facebook page for the parents and educators to share things there, so we could share some videos. We also sent home packets of work, either through the mail or a bus that would deliver food would also deliver our packets. It was really, really not the kind of hands-on work that these kids needed. Additionally, only one of our users had school permission to take his device home. The other two did not. Their parents weren't willing to sign the agreement so that they could bring their devices home. They felt like they were doing fine at home without them. So that was a challenge. Let's see if I can click. There we go. It was time for me to start thinking inside the box. Obviously, we were doing everything inside our little computers and doing everything we could here in our little worlds to reach these students and to do what we needed to do. Now, in the back of my mind, years ago, I had talked to a school psych, and we had come up with this dream to create some training modules for staff and parents to help them work with kids who had moderate and severe disabilities. And this was something we'd had just kind of a wish to do, and we hadn't really been able to act on that. Well, here I have this whole quarter where I'm not seeing students directly. I'm doing a lot of paperwork type of learning that I don't feel is effective. And I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see these Bitmoji classrooms and people talking about their Google classrooms. So obviously I look into those and my little light bulb comes on. And I created a Bitmoji classroom. This is in your handouts as well. This is a live link so that you can actually go to it. This was designed for parent training, and it has all these little pictures in here. It is never going to be finished. I keep working on it, but each of these items is a clickable link to some other than the tree. Everything else is a clickable link that you can use to get to information. And this was designed for parents really as a fundamental, what is AAC? How does it work? Why do I need to think about this? What does my child benefit from? There were also a lot of links in there for, why do I use visuals? What is a first then schedule and how do I use that? Why was that helpful at home? And I really wanted it to be accessible to parents. The little modules and introductory information each of those is a set of slides, and I did narrate those slides with audio so that parents who have trouble with literacy didn't have to read every word. They could get some narration there. There are links to videos. There are links to other websites. There are links to activities that could support emergent or early AAC communicators, like Tar Heel Shared Reader and Tar Heel Gameplay, and things on YouTube. The filing cabinet takes parents to curated lists of resources, including resources on specific AAC systems like Lampwords for Life and Proloquo to Go and Speak for Yourself, but also on visuals in general, on schedules, on different kinds of supports that parents might need. And then there are activity calendars. So I've got the lovely Practical AAC monthly calendars that were put together, as well as some from Leah Curtin on great activities just for early communication. And those were all available linked to that Bitmoji page. For the staff, I wanted something a little more meaty. I wanted them to have some accountability, and I haven't done it yet. It's still in development, but I wanted it to be an actual learning platform to go through those modules that we wanted people to learn. And my long-term goal is to actually have quizzes set up for this so that staff members can go through and complete X number of quizzes with a good score and then achieve some sort of certification. We're working to figure out exactly what that would be and what that would mean. But it would be really nice if we could have our staff go through this and that could be part of their formal training. They can do it on their own time, they can do it from home, they can do it at work, it doesn't matter. But in a Google Classroom, it's in one place where they can get that. And in there, just like in the Bitmoji Classroom, I have individual topic sections and reference materials. I expanded the presentation I made for the Blue Room, and I also adapted the presentations made for that Bitmoji Classroom to be more relevant to what it would be for a staff member. So here's a picture of kind of my cover page. Obviously, I had to throw my Bitmoji in there as well. This is kind of what it looks like on the assignments page. You can see there's different topic areas. We've got an introduction, core vocabulary. Down below that, we've got something on lamp words for life. And then I'm going to add in some additional pages for different systems. These are some of the modules that are included in there. The how to be a supermodel, again, is adapted from the parent classroom, but I kind of like to encourage them to really think about modeling and what that means and why it's so super. It's still a work in progress, and the next piece of that will be to establish some actual coaching, and I've been trying to do some work on learning about coaching and how that's a different model from just going in and saying, hey, do this, but getting that sort of interactive thing going with the staff that are working with AAC users. I've also added teachers who have, I have one student who isn't involved in this at all, but who is apraxic, uses a device and is included, or is fully included. He's not a special ed student, but I invited his teacher to the AAC classroom because that way she could learn a little bit more about what does it mean, why are we using AAC, how does it work, and those sorts of things. And hopefully I can continue to grow the staff members who are using this. I've got they're students in my classroom, but members that are in this AAC classroom at the middle school as well. And I'm opening it up to pretty much any educator that I'm working with or that I interact with. I really appreciate that you took some time out of your busy day to listen to me, and we've got time for questions, or I can pop over to the resources wakelet so that you guys can kind of see what that might look like. It does include contact information for me, which I don't know if it's in your handouts, but it's there in case you need it, so that you can contact me with any questions you might have later. You also get a copy of this presentation and then links to several of the materials that I have mentioned and other things that I found useful in my development of these programs. So Beth, if you want to let me know if there are any questions, you are more than welcome to do that.
Hey, Kim, could you go back to your Bitmoji classroom and maybe take us on a tour of that? That would be awesome.
Sure. All right, here we go. This is the Bitmoji classroom. So these are my individual modules. Each one will open up to a new presentation. This is what is AAC. Why do we use it? Each of those will open up. In the calendar, this links to the calendars. And, like I said, these are Rachel Langley's lovely calendars as well as Leah Curtin's lovely calendars. I had a parent, I did poll several people for suggestions. So I had a parent say, well, how do I know when I'm successful? Well, I kind of stole from the AAC coach and said, here we go. Here's what it looks like when you're successful. Just so that parents have an idea that we're not talking about, talking in complete sentences. But hey, did the kid look at me while I was modeling? Did I model a little bit more? Was I able to help my kid? Those sorts of things. This is the file cabinet where I have created just, honestly, lists. They're just pieces of paper and lists. It's not very exciting, but it does have a lot of information and links to other resources that parents can refer to. Each of these is clickable. This is my email. This is more information on core vocabulary. We can hit Tar Heel gameplay here, Tar Heel shared reader, and then the devices link you to the home pages of each of these vendors. And this does link you to PECS because we still have parents who are interested in tell me more about PECS. And then I do have a link to my curated YouTube channel where I have just kind of collected several videos that target really important, I think, information that parents could use to benefit. Learning about core vocabulary, learning about why we would use core and fringe, how do we model, what does it mean to use AAC, why do we do it? This links to information about, thank Kim, writing, like just writing activities for kids and how writing links into communication and literacy and those sorts of things. And information about POD, which is another really good resource that parents may be interested in. Information about schedules and about First Then. I really like Shelley Moore's videos that she released this summer, explaining schedules, explaining First Then, and talking about how those are really important for our students in our community. So that is the lovely Bitmoji Classroom. Oh, and this is just a AAC karaoke playlist. So there are songs that target specific core words that you can go to. And that way you can practice your core words while you're listening to fun music. So, but that is really, I just share a link in any email address that I have. It's in my email tag. And I share that with parents. I don't really have it published anywhere other than, sharing the link out and letting people publish it. Just because, I'm not sure what would be the best platform yet. I'm still looking at the best way to get this out to parents in our community. But I felt like just having it together is a good first step. Were there any other questions?
Yeah, we had a question about what are the Shelley Moore videos that you're talking about?
Okay, Shelley Moore is a teacher in Canada. She focuses on kids with moderate and significant needs, and she does, oh God, all these have ads, but she is just outstanding. Her whole philosophy is just outstanding. She did several videos over the summer that were kind of talking about the principles that she uses to guide her classroom at school and how parents can adapt those from home. And so the First Then is her discussion of how to use First Then and to use it really meaningfully and respectfully, not, always first do your work and then you get an M&M, but how First Then can be a really nice negotiation for helping kids understand the progression of their day and how things might work. So she is just awesome.
Okay, we got another question about, do you have a favorite way of getting feedback from the parents?
If I get any feedback from the parents, I'm excited. I, during the pandemic, really worked hard at whatever would work. So I set up a Google Voice telephone number that we could call each other. They could text me. Some parents preferred email. It was really what worked best for them, because at the time it was me reaching out to them and kind of, inserting myself in their homes instead of having their kid come to school to work with me.
Okay, somebody else would like to know about your Bitmoji Classroom, if you've ever done anything in Canvas like that.
I have not. I don't even know if we use Canvas as a platform. I think we're just primarily Google and Google Classroom. So I haven't. I've heard that you can link them into a Canvas platform. A really good resource to check on that is there are several Facebook groups for Bitmoji educators, and that's a really good place to look. The other place I found, and I'm not a YouTube person, but I found myself watching a lot of YouTube videos on how to do this and how to do that, and was very appreciative of all the people who spent time really kind of helping us to learn by sharing that information.
Kind of along those lines, what platform did you use to create that in?
This is created on a Google slide. And so it just, works whenever I need a Google slide.
All right. And somebody, you mentioned Tar Heel gameplay. So we had somebody
Mhm.
asking about that. If you could explain that a little bit.
Tar Heel gameplay by the lovely Tar Heel reader people. I will click on it to kind of give you a quick rundown. And this was what I was working on with a student today. Typically, what you can do to create one of these is get a video off of YouTube, and then you build in your own stops. And I don't think any of these have good starts for you to see. But there's one of an elephant jumping on a trampoline where you get enough of the video at the beginning, and then all of a sudden the video stops, and you have to tell the elephant to jump. And then when the student says jump, you can click jump, and it continues. And it is an outstanding resource for really engaging students. It works really well through teletherapy because the student has to use a word to tell you to do something, but it's also something that you can use with kids who are learning how to use a switch, because you can hook the switch up to the computer and they can activate the switch to make it work. And that is a really nice, motivating activity for those kids.
Would you open up your Wakelet again? Somebody is asking if you have a list of apps and websites, and I'm wondering if you might go through a little bit more what's in here, just so they have a better idea.
Sure. So a link to the resources for training, the implementation toolkit, and Modelism Master Pal. Also links to
You might want to
assessments like.
explain what those things are.
Okay, so the implementation toolkit, this will take you to the TPT store. This is a purchased product, and it is honestly like pre-made slides, pre-made data sheets. You can edit them if you want, but it is kind of, a package ready to go. If you didn't want to do anything yourself, you could purchase this, package it, it's ready to go. You can train people using AAC and how to implement it in a classroom. The AAC model as a master pal is a series of learning modules that Tabby Jones-Wolleberg developed to teach people how to be better modelers. Each of those is outlined, and this one-page briefing is a really nice outline of how it works. Each of those model, and then you've got the master pal is actually an acronym. And each of these she has a module for each of these, and you don't have to do them in any specific order, but it's a really nice outline for learning how to teach people how to model AAC and why it's useful and what you get out of it and all of those things. Communication Matrix is an assessment tool, excellent for emergent communicators, kids who are pre-verbal. The quad profile and dynamic AAC goals grid and the pragmatics profile for people who use AAC are nice assessments that you can use with AAC users to talk about a variety of different skills, not just how many words they're saying or what they're saying, but also how are they engaging socially? Do they understand how to repair a communication breakdown? Do they know when their device needs to be plugged in? Do they have those operational skills? Are they aware that they can, when their speech isn't working, they can turn to their device? So these are nice ways to kind of outline that information. Emily Diaz has some nice videos. She created one on how she set up her Google Classrooms, and she was kind of my inspiration for that. This is the handout I gave to the staff, one of the handouts I gave to staff, with just a bunch of resources for AAC that they might want to look at. Links to Practical AAC, links to Tar Heel Reader, the AAC Learning Lab, all of that information. And AAC in the Cloud is one of my favorite summer activities. And this year in particular, there were some really, really, really nice sessions. Emily Diaz's session on coaching, Elisa Wern's session, Gemma White's session. So this link will take you to the 2020, but you can also access previous years from that link. This was the kind of YouTube video that got me going, how to assemble my own Bitmoji classroom, a link to past software, because that was just instrumental, I think, in opening up the staff's eyes in my staff's eyes in how modeling really affected my students and how excited they got when somebody else was using that device and it was big so they could see it. And then a really nice link to the Indiana Resource Center for Autism. Big shout outs to them for their guidance and their support in going from what was just a pile of, broken roads into something that really is working nicely right now. So that's what I've collected in the Wakelet. Now things might get added. This is like everything else I create, a living document. So things will get added, I'm sure.
That's perfect. And then we had someone ask if you would mind showing us the modules you talked about for your staff again.
Sure. Let me see if I can pull up. Let me go back to the slide. I don't think these are clickable. No, I didn't click those. It's going to take me a minute to pull those up in my Google Drive.
Actually she was referring to the ones in your Google Classroom, your Bitmoji Classroom.
Okay, so these are the parent modules. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is, so this one is why use AAC. And again, here's one of those slides from the implementation toolkit, because like I said, I really like them. And there is, like I said, I put audio on all of them. This will give them a copy of the Communication Bill of Rights. And then I just kind of go through, like I said, in a very straightforward way, as if I were talking to the parents, hey, here's some truths, here's some myths, here's some truths. What is AAC? Talking about the different kinds of things that are available and, embedding some videos so that they can kind of see it. What does it look like? Hey, these are all different kinds of AAC. You can use all of these. The one that the director of special ed really likes is how to be a supermodel. She thought that was pretty funny. But I really do emphasize what modeling is and what it means to a parent when we're talking about modeling. So we've got videos, we've got, just basic information. It's not hard. You can do this. Just model one word, start small, that sort of thing, so that the parents really get empowered to feel like this is something they can do. And that was kind of the point of all of this, was I'm empowered to do this.
The little audio button that was on those, did you voice over on those?
Yes, I did. I just used the free voice recording website. You can create your own little mini MP3s and save them in a file and then link them to your slides. I know you can do it automatically through PowerPoint, but since I created these in Google, you can just use an outside resource to do that. But there's a couple of free websites where you can do it.
Anybody else have any questions for Kim before we wrap up and go to the last few slides that we have? Lots of comments for you, Kim. People really appreciate you sharing so much stuff. So
well,
Beth and I,
thank you.
Beth and I are going to pop back on here for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Kim. I think it was, gosh, you've been with us from the beginning, right?
Yeah, I went to the first one.
Yeah. So, and
you're a charter member.
Yeah.
And the third one, and probably several since then.
I've been to all of them.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you were willing to share your time with us tonight and all of these incredible resources. I think people are just really excited to see what you had available for them. So thank you.
Well, I hope it's really helpful. I hope that people can kind of be inspired. Obviously what worked for me isn't going to work for everybody, but maybe just, some ideas that will trigger something positive for them.
Absolutely.
Okay, and let's see, we have another slide here. If you'll move on. We want to go through the sessions that we have coming up because we still have spots open if you'd like to sign up for our remaining 3 guest webinars. The first one is, or the next one rather, will be September 10th. and it's 7 to 8:30 Eastern time, and it's helping students with complex needs thrive through literacy instruction with Beth Moss, who is an SLP, and Caitlin Hardesty, who is a special educator. So they'll be sharing that with us. That's going to be a great session on literacy instruction. And then September 24th, from 7 to 8 Eastern time, we have meeting rigorous academic expectations with AAC in secondary education with Keisha Bell, Catherine Brown, and Sammy Johnson. So we've got a couple educators and a speech path there. And what I think is great about that topic is they're going to be sharing how we have these students with complex communication needs, and we feel sometimes like, you know, we aren't sure what to expect, and how do we provide them with content that is, you know, what their peers are learning at a level they can learn it at and still meet those rigorous needs. So that'll be a great session. And then on October 8th, we have secondary literacy instruction for students with complex communication needs. Sammy Johnson and Connor Edwards, again, a couple special educators. So we're, you know, really happy. Again, Beth and I, you know, our goal was just to bring people together, and obviously we can't do that this year. So we're happy that we could make it virtually happen, and we're glad you guys could join us for that as well. And we hope that you guys will come visit us when we get back together next year. We hope to be back live again. We always have the summit in the fall, somewhere mid-September, late September. Try to have it around everybody's fall breaks. But we really enjoy bringing people together, so we're excited, and we have plans already for our live next year. We kind of already have some content ideas, and we always ask for call for papers, and we really do want a representation of whatever people are doing that's really great out there to share. So we usually have a little group of people, a panel that go through the call for papers with us, and we just, you know, we're at the mercy of whoever submits. So please, next year, submit something wonderful so that we can, you know, have that as an opportunity to share with everybody.
Somebody asked how they sign up for all the other sessions. If you go to our website, you're going to spell out Indiana AAC Summit.com and click on at the very top. You'll see Online Trainings 2020. And that page has all of the sessions and different registration links for each one. So you can go ahead and register for each one separately there. Let's see, I'm gonna look, we got a few more questions that came in, Beth, did you see?
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say too, make sure if you're not part of our Facebook page, join our Facebook page, because we do try to keep people up to date on things that are going on there. So that's another way to keep up with what we're doing.
And text the word summit to 474747. That's another way.
We did have a question about the summit, how we funded it. So the first year,
yeah, that is a loaded question.
Well, a couple of things. We partnered with Indiana University, and we also got a grant that helped provide as well. So, for example, we said we had Martin Pistorius, and so we did not pay for him to come from, England. IU got a grant to bring him over, and he was here for a week. So while he was here, we timed everything out so he could be one of our guest speakers, which was awesome. So we do charge for the summit in person, but we keep it really low. We feel like it's a great value. Any early bird is usually about $125, and that's 2 full days plus lunch. And you get, your professional development content. You get to meet with people. You get to hear great speakers. Beth and I both really feel like we want to keep the price down so that if you work for an agency that does not pay, that you could still come if you wanted to and not break the bank. So it isn't a money-making venture. It's just enough to pay the bills, because if we have it in a venue, we have to pay for the hotel or the meeting space, and then the presenters get a stipend, and then we pay for the food, and we all the things that we have to pay for to make that happen.
Hey, Kim, somebody asked, how long did it take for you to make the Bitmoji classroom?
It was a good summer project. But I didn't work, constantly. the original idea came together pretty quickly. Creating the individual modules took some time. I probably spent a couple of weeks on each module. But that wasn't, like working all day, because by then it was summer and I'm doing stuff with my family and I'm, doing stuff for myself and not working. But I would spend a good couple of hours, at least a week, on it throughout the summer. And I think I finished it up toward the end of July.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's done now. And it's, I can take it apart and use the pieces for other things. And so
Yeah.
it was definitely something I felt like was worth my time and was worth, kind of giving back to, since I wasn't in person with my students and I couldn't get those direct minutes, a way for me to really give back to what those parents and staff needed.
What was the parent reaction to it?
It's gone out to some parents. I haven't gotten any feedback, but that's pretty typical for our parents. So.
Sure.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. So you're welcome to sign off now, or if you'd like to stay and ask a question, feel free to do that as well.
But thanks again to Kim, and thank you everybody. And we sure hope that we see you again here in a couple of weeks at our next Summit webinar.